Hello, BookTube. Well, I seem to be in the middle of a full-blown revolt of the machines here, so I don't know if you're going to see this video. I don't know if I'm going to make it to completion. My phone stopped recording at the end of a previous video today and told me that it was completely full. I'm constantly negotiating the tiny amount of space that it appears to give me for memory. I look under, iPhone memory, and it tells me that the apps take up this much space, the documents take up this much space, the pictures take up this much space. There's an enormous amount of space that is called other. It's by far if I could clear that out, I would have all the room in the world on this phone, but the phone won't tell me what other is, and I can't figure it out on my own. So it stopped. I'm constantly running out of room on the phone. It cannot handle a 30-minute video. And so I switched to my MacBook, and it ran out of memory and said that it could not handle a 30-minute video. And I can't make short videos, so I don't know what I'm going to do here. I've cleared out as much room as I possibly can on this phone. I'm going to try and make this one video and then just give it a rest for the day. Maybe I'm having a bad day. Maybe it'll all be better tomorrow. So this is Vlogmas, day 15. And I thought for day 15 of Vlogmas, I would give you a rundown of the year's best and worst list that I do over on Steve Reads. For those of you who don't know, for a long time now, I have made a year's best and worst list on my literary blog, Steve Reads. And in 2018, for the first time, Steve Reads was not a separate entity. It is now part of the literary journal that I run online called Open Letters Review. I assumed that in 2018, going into 2019, we're all, even me, we're all computer literate enough to understand labeling. So Open Letters Review is it's a Foursquare critical journal where we are blurbed on covers, we are quoted. It's objective, clear, lively book reviews. And I assume that if on Open Letters Review I write a post that is a blog post for Steve Reads and just slap a Steve Reads banner over it, you'll all know what that means. You'll know that you're not reading a review. So that's where I moved my Steve Reads list. And we went through it day by day, category by category, and it is now finished. And I wanted to run down the best entries in those categories just in case there are probably lots of you who haven't bothered to go and read those entries. The entries are not ranked except for number one. Number one in every category is the best, or in the worst case, the worst example of that category that I read that year. So I thought I would go through the number ones here, except for the worst fiction and the worst nonfiction. I didn't see the point in kicking things when they're down. So we'll start with category 15, which is reprints. And the best reprint I saw was Song in a Weary Throat by Pauli in a beautiful new paperback. Then category 14 was kids and YA, and that was Yuval Zommer's The Big Book of the Blue, an oversized kids book about the wonders of the ocean that I loved. I loved it a lot more than a lot of books that had a lot more words in them. Then category 13 was works in translation. I made a point of pointing out this year what has been true all along. I just haven't stressed it. That's why I changed the title's name from Best Translations to Works in Translation, because I wanted to stress that in any given year, I am not going to be able to read the originals of a great number of the books in translation. Usually I can read about half, and do. But in any given year, there are going to be books where I'm only judging on the English of the translation. So that's what the category is about, the worth of the translation. And in this case, it was Robert Alter's finally finished translation of the Hebrew Bible, of the Old Testament, that is just a stunning work of both translation and commentary. Then category number 12 was debut fiction. You all know how much I love debut fiction. And this time we went to Stephen Markley's Ohio, his novel Ohio. Which it's rare that my list will coincide with anybody else's, but in this case, lots of people commented on how it made a lot of people's lists for most notable debuts of the year because it's so outstandingly good. Then category 11 was historical fiction, and for that I chose a sequel, The Sea Queen by Linnea Hartsuyker, her sequel to The Half-Drowned King, Viking fiction. So much better than most Viking fiction is. It feels wrong to even call it that. And also wrong to call it a sequel because it stands on its own and is wonderful. I heartily recommend The Half-Drowned King as well. Then category 10 is science fiction and fantasy. I don't give them separate categories because heretically on this channel, I know I've got a lot of pushback from some people about this, but I don't consider them to be two separate genres. Both science fiction and fantasy are positing an alternate world that is internally coherent, but that doesn't bear any resemblance to the real world around you. that I don't really care. As I've said many times, I don't really care whether you travel faster than light through some technology that is not possible as far as the physics that we know, or whether you travel faster than light because Gandalf says you can. To me, it seems like the same thing with different dresses on. So I just make one category for science fiction and fantasy, and this time around it was Gnomon by Nick Harkaway, an author I am now coming unabashedly to love. He's never done anything I haven't loved, and every time he does a new novel, I love it more than I did the one before. So, and this is a big, hugely complex thing about a surveillance state and false memories, and even buried inside there a police procedural that's really good. It's really well done. I loved it. Then category 9 was mystery, and for this I chose Daughters of the Lake by Wendy Webb. Sort of Northern Gothic, sort of Northern American Great Lakes Gothic set on Lake Superior. That I was expecting that the best mystery for this year would be the latest installment in an ongoing series. That was most of my best mystery this year, but I'd never read anything else by Wendy Webb, and I thought this was far superior. It was just amazingly good. It sticks with me too. Even the conclusion especially sticks with me even after all this time. And I will list all of these things down below. Then category 8 is romance. I picked the latest in the Brides of Belgravia series, All Dressed in White by Charis Michaels, just delightfully sparkling, the perfect example of a modern day Regency romance. Then category 7 was Science and Nature. The winner will come as no surprise to any of you. It was Eager by Ben Goldfarb. His incredibly wonky love letter to beavers. And there's just you smile when you hear that description, and then you're smiling all throughout the book, and you learn a lot too. Then category 6 was biography, my own favorite genre, and the number 1 spot went to Raymond Arsenault's biography of Arthur Ashe, big fat book about the tennis star Arthur Ashe that changes the way you think of him, so that when you're done with the book, you'll no longer think of him as just a tennis star. It turns out he was so much more than that. I myself knew that he was a little more than that because I was so impressed by his own memoir that I automatically considered him a writer and a tennis star. But it turns out this book, he was so much more than that. Just a terrific biography. Then category 5 was history, another favorite of mine. And the winner was Claudia Renton's book, Those Wild Wyndhams, where she takes a famous John Singer Sargent portrait of the Wyndham sisters and tells their story, not just their own biographies and their marriages and their loves and disappointments, but also their broader world, and does it in an amazingly involving way. Just terrific. Then category 4 was worst fiction, and there was a lot of bad fiction this year, but we don't have to worry about any of it. And category 3 was worst nonfiction, and there was a lot of absolutely awful nonfiction this year. And we don't have to worry about that either. Then category 2 was best fiction. And after a lot of struggle, a lot of which I captured on camera for this channel, after a lot of struggle, it went to The Overstory by Richard Powers. His story about sentient trees and a handful of mismatched activists, and the larger plot that involves them both. And when I first read it, I did not know what to make of it, which I guess is a hallmark of some really good fiction. I did not know what to make of that book. Didn't know whether even I had just read an absurd novel by a great novelist. And I thought about it. I read it a second time. I let it sit for months in the back of my mind, and then finally I came to it cold and read it again. And after a while, I realized that a lot of the things that were confusing me about it were things that it had covered. It was working on a lot of levels, and I just needed time to assess them. So it got my number 1 for fiction for 2018. And then nonfiction, I had to split the number 1 spot between 3 books, because there was a lot of great nonfiction, but the best nonfiction in the year were books, about reading, which is always great in its own right, but there were so many of them this year. The list originally was 10 books. I whittled it down to 3. The first one was Anne Bogle's book, I'd Rather Be Reading, just a classic reading memoir, books, the struggles of readers, her personal life interweaved with her story about being a reader. Then 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die by James Mustish, which is, again, a lifetime endeavor of him. We saw it on this channel. I've talked about it many times. This is enormous and beautifully illustrated, beautifully produced book of what he considers to be the books, 1,000 books. And it's full of off-kilter suggestions, obvious stuff, but also stuff you've never heard of. It will spark arguments. It certainly did with me. I'm still arguing with it. But it is an absolutely essential book for a book person to have. And then the best nonfiction of the year, really, and the best of these 3, The Library Book by Susan Orlean, which is has as its spine a true crime investigation into a fire that swept through a big library in Los Angeles a long time ago, decades ago. And her uncovering the details of that fire, why it was so severe, how the community reacted, who might have been responsible, and what we know about their responsibility. So on that level, thrilling in its own right. But that was just the spine, and the book that she wove around that was a celebration of libraries that no one should miss. No one. Libraries are incredible places. I felt a little guilty the whole time I was reading the book because I don't use mine anymore. Almost all of my reading is professional reading of one kind or another, and almost all of it is supplied by publishers. So I almost never go to my beloved Boston Public Library anymore, and that makes me feel bad, but this book brought back all of the wonder that I have felt about libraries in a lot of different places for most of my life, including a few libraries here in Boston. So, and if you are a frequent user of your library, oh my God, this will be one of this and 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die will be one of the few books you'll ever hear me on this channel say that you must go and buy it. Don't put it on an Amazon wish list. Don't wait for it to come out in paperback. Go and buy it. You're going to love it. It is going to be not just a permanent part of your collection, but a frequently revisited part of your collection. So that's it. That is Vlogmas Day 15. I thought I'd go. I promised that I would do an overview of those lists for those of you who weren't looking at them. Now I just have to see. If this will record, if this will upload. I have no idea what's going on with my technology. What I wouldn't give for a one-stop machine, a machine that does it all and that I don't have to worry about. And I know what that machine is. BookTube. I know what that machine is. It's a new iPad. If I got a brand new iPad, then it would be fine. It would be a crystal sharp camera. They're legendary for their cameras now. The photo booth or whatever I use, whatever simple recording program I use would work just fine. It would probably be native to the machine. There would be plenty of storage. That's what I need to do. I need to just put aside a couple of commission checks and get a new iPad. That is the one-stop machine. But I haven't done that yet, so I'm still working on an iPhone that's constantly grudging me space. So we'll see. We'll see if this works. So I'm going to stop this now before I push my luck. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.